Hi, I'm Dr. Janine Downey. I'm a board-certified dermatologist and I practice at Image Dermatology in Montclair, New Jersey. For those of you that are watching this that are international, I'm about 12 miles or 20 kilometers outside of New York City in a green leafy suburb of Montclair that I really love. For those of you that are listening to me that you know what I usually sound like, I have super bad allergies, so please forgive the nasal congestion. Today, we're going to talk about DEI and what happened within the American Academy of Dermatology. So back on January 15th, Martin Luther King's birthday, I found out that a certain amount of physicians, about 100, within the American Academy of Dermatology were very interested in removing all diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives within the AAD. This shocked me, saddened me, and really disappointed me because we've talked about doing AAD DEI initiatives for years and finally put them into place in 2022, and they went into effect in 2023. The anti-diversity, equity, and inclusion side was that all DEI within the American Academy of Dermatology, because of what was happening over in Israel since October 7th, and because of certain politicians within Congress, was inherently anti-Semitic. Well, as you guys know, politicians are not dermatologists, and we as human beings feel horrible for what happened on October 7th to Israel. And I like to say that I am anti-Netanyahu, but I am pro-Israel, and I am pro-Palestine, and I am pro-peace. What happened on October 7th has nothing to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives within the American Academy of Dermatology. So I got a bunch of friends involved instantly, and we wrote a counter letter, a counter resolution as it was, to their resolution. Their resolution talked about removing all diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our counter resolution talked about supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion, but fighting against anti-Semitism. According to the ACLU and the Anti-Defamation League, unfortunately, anti-Semitism in the United States specifically has increased in terms of hate crimes against Jewish people by 360%. This is not acceptable, this is not right, and we need to fight against anti-Semitism and protect our Jewish patients, our Jewish colleagues, our Jewish friends, and our fellow Jewish dermatologists. And I feel strongly, as a Black Catholic non-Jew, in making this statement that we have to support and help everybody. Because hate and anti-Semitism and racism and Islamophobia and anti-LGBTQ are all inherently wrong, and they must all be fought against. And we can't tolerate this. We're educated, we need to act educated. However, when you tell me that DEI within the AAD is inherently anti-Semitic, I'm a scientist, I'm a doctor. I need proof, cold hard facts, that this is what's happening, this is who it's hurt, and this is why it should end. Looking at statistics, I got all the statistics from the AAD. I fundraised for them for years. I've been a member of Skin Cancer Take a Hike, which is one of my Jewish colleagues, Dr. Ellen Marmer's brainchild. I hiked with her in Iceland several years ago. I hiked with her last year when we were in Osaka in Japan on the Kamano Kono Trail. I've raised a lot of money for the AAD. I asked them specifically for what it is that their numbers were with African American dermatologists, Native American dermatologists, and Latino dermatologists. And I found out, statistic-wise, Native Americans are about less than 0.5% in the world of dermatology. They only represent 3 to 4% of the general population, which is terrible because Native Americans owned this land before anybody else did. So clearly that's terrible. African Americans are roughly 14% of the general population. And we, in terms of practicing dermatologists, were 3.6%. And according to the AAD, in terms of our Latino brothers and sisters, they are roughly 18.5% to 19% of the general population, and they're about 5 to 5.5% of the practicing dermatologists in America. So Latinos, African Americans, and Native Americans are underrepresented minorities. I will not be gaslighted, and I don't tolerate foolishness at all, and I never have. I'm a straight shooter. I am as I appear. I'm very blunt. You either like my personality or you don't, but I don't want diversity, equity, and inclusion to end. I contacted Wendy Roberts, who helped write the petition, Heidi Waldorf, who's Ashkenazi Jewish, who helped write the petition, and we got over 6,000 signatures on our petition in terms of preserving DEI, but helping to fight against anti-Semitism. So it was mostly doctors that were dermatologists, patients, and industry that signed our 6,000 plus petition. During that time, we advised our friends, our colleagues, and different people that were anonymously kind of calling us to ask us questions. We asked them, this is not right. We feel like you're trying to erase African Americans within the world of dermatology and Latinos and Native Americans, and it's not acceptable. Please do not sign this petition. This is not a good petition. This is not going to work, and we are not going to tolerate it. Some people understood, some people didn't. The AAD DEI initiatives, what they do specifically is we mentor medical students and young dermatology residents. We give investigator awards to promote research in underrepresented minority research areas like vitiligo. And we fund tickets, plane tickets, for them to go present their findings at the AAD meetings. And quite frankly, obviously, we're not flying them business class, we're flying them somewhere in the back of coach. But those are the three things we do. And in the first year of the program, we've had success as over 30% of the underrepresented minority mentees have received placement into dermatology. So that's fantastic, because these mentees will now go towards the underserved populations and help to represent dermatologists better and help to make patients feel more comfortable. And I say this to say, anybody can take care of anybody. About 55 to 60% of my patient population is white. And then 40%, the rest of the 40%, African American, Latino American, Asian American, and then Native American, kind of in that order. But I don't say this to say anybody can't take care of anybody. Every doctor can take care of every patient, but many patients are more comfortable with people that look like them. And that is all there is to it. And because African Americans, Latino Americans, and Native Americans are so underrepresented in dermatology, it begs to say that this is not a threat at all, and that we need to move forward together. Show me the anti-Semitism that's involved in mentoring, giving research support, and giving money to kids so that they can present their cases. And if there is anti-Semitism, then we need to figure that out, because we can't have that. And if there's not anti-Semitism and you're just making something up and you're gaslighting me, that's not acceptable. Dr. Wendy Roberts, African American from California, Dr. Heidi Waldorf, Ashkenazi Jewish from New York, and me, Dr. Janine Downey from Montclair, New Jersey, the three of us got together and we wrote a petition, and we had 6,000 signatures on this petition. We were thrilled. In the meantime, in between time, the list came out of about the 107 or so doctors who had signed the anti-DEI petition. Many of those doctors, from what we understood later, were coerced into signing it. They were told they weren't going to be good Jewish citizens if they didn't sign it, and all kinds of things that simply weren't true. Of course you're a good Jewish citizen if you don't sign an anti-diversity, equity, and inclusion petition that has to do with the American Academy of Dermatology, because there's no straight line of anti-Semitism to DEI activities within the American Academy of Dermatology. There is no straight line. So we asked repeatedly, the three of us and the larger population of people that were watching this happen, for proof that our Jewish friends and colleagues were being harmed by DEI initiatives, and we got no proof. So when the list came out, it started a show. And it was not a good show, it was an SH show of people putting stuff on social media. I did not participate in that, of people posting names and saying, oh, well, these people are the people that you don't want to see. And then some people took the people that signatories, the anti-DEI people, and said, well, these are the people that you definitely want to see because they're not woke and they're good to see. It was just horrible. And so there was foolishness on the pro-DEI side and the anti-DEI side that I did not participate in on social media in terms of being rude to fellow colleagues. I was and still am disappointed that so many people signed an anti-DEI petition without thinking about the ramifications. For me, as an African American, I trained at Mount Sinai, and I'm the first African American woman that ever trained there back in the 90s. The first African American man was trained there in 1968. He finished in 1971, and they didn't have anybody else until the mid-90s when they hired me that was African American. I was isolated. I was not treated respectfully by some of the visiting dermatologists, and people knew, and people did nothing. I do not want to go back to those days of lack of support for underrepresented minorities. I tend to have thick skin, and I tend to, as I like to call it, eye the eye. That stands for ignore the ignorant. So I just kept laser focused on the fact that I was going to be a board certified dermatologist, and I did not care about the naysayers that were visiting attendings within my program. I did not care, and I moved forward and I did what I had to do so that I could complete the program. However, for my younger colleagues, as they're going to be, for my mentees, for residents that I don't know, what I want is for them to be supported in a better way than I was. I feel that diversity, equity, and inclusion is basically sending the elevator down to the bottom floor to get the next group of residents and medical students and bring them up. It's basically like, after you get to where you want to go in life, do you pull the ladder up so nobody else can get there? Or do you reach out a hand or send the elevator down to help the next group get up to where you are? I believe that diversity, equity, inclusion is bringing the elevator up and helping younger residents get to where they need to get so that they too can be successful. It's not about just being successful on your own, and I've always felt like that. Looking at the petition, looking at what was happening on social media, Heidi, Wendy, and I forged forward. We put together an excellent presentation that was, quite frankly, mostly Heidi's presentation, and I presented it for 3 minutes at the American Academy of Dermatology's Reference Committee meeting. That was held on March 8th of 2024 in San Diego at our annual meeting. It was about a 2.5-hour meeting. There were about 15 people that spoke on the anti-DEI side and roughly about 45 people that spoke on the pro-DEI side. The person that started the anti-DEI petition is an Orthodox Jewish man named Brian Raphael, Dr. Brian Raphael, from Albany, New York. I've never heard of him before January 15th, and then thought about him constantly between January 15th and March 8th, and why he did this and what he hoped to get out of it and what his proof was. As the room filled, there were roughly 800 or so dermatologists in the room. They checked IDs. They did not let industry in at all. They did not let media in at all. Allure.com did an article. The NAACP got wind of this and wrote a letter to the AAD saying if they moved forward with this, they might have to sue them. All kinds of other things were happening. The tension in the air was so thick that you could cut it with a knife. So I saw one friend of mine that had been on anti-maintenance of certification things with, who was a colleague of mine from Las Vegas, and I said, wow, we're not in the same side this time, are we? And he said, no, we're not. And I said, okay. And another friend of mine who's Orthodox Jewish, who I've been to her house for Shabbat, who practices at Downstate, came up to me and gave me a hug. And I said, I'm so disappointed that you signed an anti-DEI petition. And she said it was necessary. And I said, I don't think so. There's other ways of handling things. But we did give each other a hug because we've been friends since Mount Sinai, where we trained together. So this petition ruined friendships. This petition undermined relationships. And although about 40 people, from what I understand, 40 doctors that signed it, unsigned the petition, a lot of people can't unsee who actually signed it to begin with. I can, because I want this whole rift to heal, but there are some people that are still very supportive of it. So next things next. Dr. Brian Raphael, who led the anti-DEI charge, got up to the microphone and he stated that he wanted to sunset all diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives within the AAD because they were inherently anti-Semitic. Now, let me talk about what sunsetting means to African Americans. It is not a correct term to use with us ever. And many people don't know why, so I'll tell you why. Historically, the towns in Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, Missouri, and Louisiana had sunset rules. So African Americans in particular, I had to be off the road before 6 p.m., or I could be captured by the police or by regular citizen. I could be raped, I could be lynched, I could be tortured, I could be murdered, my children be kidnapped, and I was not safe. So they had sunset laws in many southern states where African Americans, although this is post-slavery, during Reconstruction, we were supposed to be free, but there were all these rules and crazy laws that impeded our passage and let us not be out after dark, lest we cause trouble. But meanwhile, people were being lynched left and right during that time. So sunset laws and sunsetting is racist, and they should have never used that word within their petition. I personally think that they knew what sunsetting means to African Americans, and I think that that's why they used it, and I think it's unacceptable because I, as an aware citizen of the world, know what not to use when I'm speaking to my Jewish friends and colleagues to make sure that they understand that I respect them, that I support their religion, and that I hold them up. So they should have never used the term sunsetting with me and my colleagues because we know historically what that means. If they wanted to use a term and they wanted to remove DEI, they should have said remove DEI, replace DEI, but not sunset DEI. There's a historical meaning to that that is racist, and that's all there is to it. So now let's move forward. Dr. Raphael got up there and he said that sunsetting all DEI was what he wanted to do because it was inherently anti-Semitic. And then, and I give a sigh, he started talking about quotas. The minute anyone starts talking about quotas, that is code language for you don't feel that your black and brown colleagues deserve to be in the positions that they're in. That's what it's code for. We all know that since the Bakke decision, B-A-K-K-E, look it up, in 1978, I think his first name was David Bakke, medical student somewhere out in California, sued because there were quotas to get African Americans into medical school, and he'd not gotten in for, I think, 2 years in a row, and he won, and he was able to get a place out in California in medical school, and the Bakke decision removed all quotas from medicine and from everywhere in the United States, and has since then. So there are no quotas, and everybody knows it. Dermatology is a meritocracy. We are the best and the brightest. Dermatology is the most difficult thing to get outside of medical school, and that's all there is to it. So to that end, interrupting where Brian was, Dr. Jack Resnick, he's the chair of the AMA, the American Medical Association, and he happens to be a dermatologist. He came up on the pro-DEI side and he spoke. He's the professor and endowed chair of UCSF. He said, there are no quotas. My residents are among the best and the brightest out there. I challenge any of you in the audience who think that you're smarter than my residents to come put yourself against them. I only accept the best and the brightest. This is awful. This is not good. We should not be doing this. There are no quotas. So Jack Resnick from UCSF got up and talked about there are no quotas. One of the chairmen from Oklahoma got up and talked about there are no quotas. Chairman from Massachusetts, chairman from Vermont, chairman from New York, chairman from Texas, chairman from, I believe, Kentucky, I think Missouri, definitely Florida, all got up and they were all on the pro-DEI side. Getting back to what Dr. Raphael was saying, he went on to keep talking about quotas, and he had no scientific proof of any diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative within the American Academy of Dermatology, which is what we're speaking about, that had harmed any Jewish patient, any Jewish colleague, any Jewish dermatologist that he knew. He had no objective evidence. But he basically, as my good friend Dr. Wendy Roberts said, threw a bomb into the sandbox and then tried to act like the bomb wasn't there, that we were all on the same side and that we all wanted the same thing. No, there's a bomb there. You said this, you said it without proof, we asked you for proof, you brought no proof forward. His 3 minutes was over. He got booed, by the way, when he started talking about quotas by the 800 some odd people in the audience. He was booed. I got up to speak next. My heart was pounding. I've thought of many things between January 15th and this March 8th meeting, but I thought about this a whole lot. I was nervous. I was wondering how I was going to be accepted, and I was on fire with anger over him talking about quotas. I am not a representative of quotas. I deserve to be a dermatologist, as do all of my other colleagues that are Black and brown. We are all, in terms of the Human Genome Project, we are about 99.7% the same DNA. It's that other 0.3% that makes us darker, or makes us lighter, or makes our hair blonde, or makes our eyes blue. And that's what all the fuss is about. Using a phenotype to say somebody doesn't belong somewhere is racist. And I was not putting up with it. So I was nervous, my heart was pounding, and I was on fire. There were several of my friends that I consider my friends in the room that I asked to come to listen to me speak, to understand that my heart was in the right place. I got up there and I commenced to speak. I only had 3 minutes. I talked about how I felt like I was being erased by this initiative and that I would not stand to be erased in front of my own eyes. I spoke on what the underrepresented minorities in medicine were in terms of percentages right now, what we were doing in terms of mentoring them, giving research support, and sending them to meetings to lecture, how much success we've had. And then I also talked about my heart going out to the Jewish dermatologists and the Jewish people of America for a rise in hate crimes of 360%. And that's as of the first week in March. It could be worse now. So I talked about how we need to fight anti-Semitism, because with Jews is not about underrepresentation, it's about hate. And hate is wrong on every level, all day long, all the time. I will not be silent about hate. Silence about hate gets you nowhere, and it makes it worse. But then I also said that we could support DEI and expand DEI, and I suggested an ad hoc committee or a separate committee under the AAD where we fight anti-Semitism. So support DEI, expand DEI, and fight against anti-Semitism. That was my proposal. My mic was cut off, as Dr. Raphael's mic was cut off. It was fine. I was basically finished. I received a standing ovation. I was very emotional. I had put my heart and my soul into what I was saying. And I looked at the audience and I went like this and I said, "Thank you." And my voice is loud. And many times I don't need a microphone. I looked at the people in the front that were anti-DEI as if to say, I hope you see where this is going. So I looked at them sternly, not unfriendly, but just, I hope you see where this is going, from my standing ovation. I thanked the committee, the reference committee. I thanked Whitney Tope, who was the head of the reference committee, and I sat down. Dina spoke next. Dina spoke impassionately. She also got a standing ovation, and then all of the different sides went back and forth. The one ex-friend of mine from Las Vegas, he got up there and said, a Black, a Jew, a gay, a Muslim, a trans, and a woman all apply for a spot in dermatology. Who gets the spot? And dropped the mic and walked away. That's what he said. I'll probably never talk to him again. I was incredulous. I was simply incredulous. Incredulous. Another colleague, friend of mine, got up there and started talking about how she was the great-granddaughter of Holocaust survivors. And my heart goes out to Holocaust survivors and their family members. I am the great-great-granddaughter of slaves. But we are not talking about the Holocaust, and we are not talking about slavery. We are talking about a specific diversity, equity, and inclusion within the AAD. We're not talking about slavery. We're not talking about the Holocaust. We're talking about DEI, and if indeed it's inherently anti-Semitic, which is the statement that the anti-side put forward that they had to prove. In the end of it all, with all of the academics that got up there and said there are no quotas, all of the other people that got up there and said this is wrong, many Jewish people, Orthodox Jewish people, walked up there, many men with yarmulkes, many women walked up there that were Orthodox Jewish and said this is wrong, and this is going to make the wider dermatology population dislike Jewish people more. That was Heidi Waldorf's stance on this, that this is wrong and that people are going to dislike Jews more, to which I said no, people are thoughtful. Hopefully that will not be the case. But the fact is that many, many, many people were pro-DEI, and more people in the room were pro-DEI than were anti-DEI. The reference committee meeting ended after several claps and applause for the pro-DEI side and many boos, including that bad joke being booed from the anti-DEI side. On Sunday, there was an advisory board meeting, and fortunately, the pro-DEI side prevailed. They took Dina's resolution, Dina Strawn. That was a resolution that was pro-DEI, against anti-Semitism, against racism, against anti-LGBTQ, and against Islamophobia. And they moved forward with Dina's resolution because she included all those different factors into her resolution. We were pleased that this is over for the time being, but I will say for the record, in my opinion, as one of my good friends David Sperling said, evil never rests, and we need to stay vigilant. This whole thing came up only 2.5 years ago within the AAD in another form before the DEI resolutions and initiatives even started, and they will be back later. We need to support minorities, and we need to make sure that our specialty, orthopedics, not according to Janine Downey, but according to the American Medical Society, is the most white specialty, and dermatology is the second most white specialty. I went to lecture before the Derm Society of New Jersey just yesterday, and I was the only African American in the room, in a room full of about 250 doctors. That's okay. I was fine with lecturing about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and people came up to me afterwards, including a beautiful young Orthodox woman who thanked me for my spirit and thanked me for being concerned about anti-Semitism, and a dark-skinned Indian gentleman who thanked me for being concerned about Islamophobia because everybody mistakenly thinks that he's Muslim. And he said that he's glad that I'm concerned about all aspects of that, and that even though I am successful myself, I still want to lend a hand to the next person. And I think that's really, really super important. Dermatology, in my opinion, needs to be more diverse. These are measures we're taking to make sure it becomes more diverse. We're not going to sit for people telling us something that's happening that they know full well is not happening, because that's not tolerable. And we need to move forward as adults and as citizens of the world and respect each other, support each other, fight against racism, fight against anti-Semitism, fight against Islamophobia, and fight against anti-LGBTQ. We need to work together and prove that we're the best specialty out there. We're still proud of our 6,000 signatures. We're proud of all the work we did. We also worked with Dina, and we're proud of Dina. So we're happy that the pro-DEI side moved forward. And now I feel it's imperative among all of us dermatologists to work together, to forgive those that signed the anti-DEI petition, and to try to figure out how we can prove that we're the best and the brightest to the rest of the population while supporting and mentoring young people with skin of color that are coming up in the field of dermatology.